inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Today's conversation is with Brad Herman, owner of the Arsenal Bookstore. Now, with no experience or education on what it means to own a business, Brad was able to walk through some God-opened doors to enter the publishing industry and own a couple of retail bookstores. We discussed the business of books and how he has been able to partner with God through both retail storefront and e-commerce to best demonstrate God's love and have an impact in the lives of his customers. His story is also one that really testifies of the goodness and full provision of God to be the source of what you need to prosper in kingdom-driven business. Now, before we get started, did you know about our Firestarter School course? Firestarter School walks you through key foundations and practical application that will help you to confidently partner with God at greater levels in your business. It's all about positioning you to experience his best and have a greater kingdom impact in the marketplace. I guess you can kind of say that it's like having me as a mentor in your pocket. And I truly believe that if you are a listener of this podcast and enjoy what you're hearing and learning, you are going to want to grab Firestarter School. And guess what? It is available at the price of your choice. So head over to our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/Firestarter School and get all the details. Now let's get started with today's conversation with Brad Herman. Listen in and enjoy. What's going on, Brad? How are you?
Good. How are you doing today, Shay?
I am doing great. And so you and I have a mutual friend in Sean Tabbitt. I had Sean on the podcast, I think that was last November, and I just recently was on his. And so he told me, this is what he told me about you. He said, you are his favorite person in the publishing industry.
Oh, wow. That's a huge honor. Well, I love Sean. He's amazing. And I mean, he's one of the bright lights in this industry.
He's fantastic. So let's just start with your story of just even how you ended up as an entrepreneur.
At no time did I plan it necessarily. I mean, I've always had a desire for something more, meaning, in my employment or in my life. I ended up going to Bible school and planned to be in pastoral ministry. It just seemed like the thing to do, just to be in ministry. And so I ended up on staff at a local church in Colorado Springs, and Cindy Jacobs attended that church. And one Sunday, I was overseeing the ushers, and she called me out and she said, Brad's going to use you in the marketplace and in ministry. And I had no paradigm for that.
Yes.
I didn't understand P&Ls. I didn't understand anything about business. I had no understanding of anything. And so I thought, well, this will be interesting to see how this all happens, And so I worked at that church for a while, and it just wasn't cut out for that pastoral ministry. And so over a period of time, I ended up giving them my notice and thinking I just wanted to go back into the secular arena and work. I felt like it was easier to be light in the secular market than it was to be in working in a church day in and day out and just working with Christians. And so I basically quit my job with nothing. I had no job. I didn't know where I was going to go. I was married, and my wife had a job at a ministry. Well, that ministry called me and said, we need someone to run our publishing company. And I said, I don't know anything about publishing. And they said, well, we heard you really like books. So I joke with that because the bar was really low, that they were willing to take me on. But it was a great opportunity. And I put my ear to the ground. And basically in 1 year, I learned a lot about the industry. And that year, I took us to the CBA show. This was in the end of 2000. We went it was in New Orleans, and we lost a bunch of money because I didn't fully know what I was doing. But but we put out a bunch of great books. It was Peter Wagner's publishing company, so it was a huge honor to work with Peter and to put out these books that he wanted to do at that time. And we worked with a lot of different authors from a lot of different spheres of influence. But we had a paradigm that really, in the long run, now that I understand publishing, wouldn't work for the long run.
Yes.
What Peter had in mind. I mean, as long as the ministry was there to underwrite it, but it wasn't going to be like a massive success financially. But during that period of time, I learned a lot. I mean, I did a lot of different facets for Peter, helping them with conference bookstores and different things like that. But at the end of 2003, Peter announced that he was going to shut down the areas of his ministry that he didn't start himself. And he announced that he was going to shut down the bookstore and the publishing company. And at that point, I could see that the publishing company was going to struggle to make it fully for the future. But I thought that bookstore could make money. And the reality was the bookstore was losing money every single month. And it was because of the way it was being run.
So you saw potential.
I did see potential. And the crazy thing was, before I even worked there, I would go into the bookstore. They would not merchandise it. I mean, they would the employees would put the books up and the books would be there a month later. And so if you go into a place and you see the same books there a month later, you figure they have nothing new. And so I would go in and merchandise it for them. Every week I would put new books out, and I didn't even work for the store. I wouldn't ask them. I would just go out and flip the book. And so I already had a real heart for the store. And I'd even find books for them and say, you need to order this into your store because, this needs to be a part of the list. And so anyway, at the end of 2003, I'm going to be out of a job, basically, because Peter's going to shut down the bookstore. He's going to shut down the publishing company. I had an offer to work for Charisma. They were going to hire me on to move down to Orlando. But at that time, a gentleman came to me and said, wouldn't it be wild if we bought Peter's bookstore from him? And I'm telling you, that lodged in me. I mean, it lodged in my heart. It was a huge risk. It could have totally flopped. And I had a solid offer from Charisma, probably making $75,000 a year. And so, part of me is like, money, solid offer. And then there's this risk. And I called one of my mentors, who's like a spiritual dad to me. And I sat across the table from him and I kind of laid out these things to him. And I said, Perry, I just, I feel like the Lord has just put this before us. And honestly, during that time I was praying and I felt like the Lord said, I'll bless you in either one.
Yes.
And that was a little bit of a paradigm shift for me.
That's right.
I'm like, but what do I do, Lord?
He's like, what's the desire of your heart? I'm going with you.
And so my spiritual dad says to me, he goes, Brad, I'd never tell you what to do. He said, but if I could reflect to you in the last 4 years, everything you've ever said to me is, I'd love to own a bookstore.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that just sealed it. I went home and I said to my wife, I think we're supposed to do this. And I think she was kind of looking more for this solid job thing, but we prayed about it and she's like, okay, I'm in. And there were points, Shay, when that deal was looking like we couldn't even figure it out.
Yes.
I was going to be totally out of income for like a 2-month period while I bought this from Peter and Doris Wagner. And I went to Doris and I said, Doris, this isn't going to work. It's just, this plan is not going to come together. And she said, what are the issues? And I said, well, I'm going to be out of income for 2 months. She goes, well, we'll just pay you for 2 months.
Wow. The favor of God.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, And so we opened that store and it was wildly successful. I mean, it was instantly profitable. And it was a delight to run. Loved running it. And, we took out a $30,000 loan at that time, really, to open the store. We had to buy all new bookshelves. That was like $10,000 in bookshelves. So we bought those and we paid that $30,000 loan off by the end of the year. I mean, we did really well. But as I mentioned to you before, we ended up kind of running into, it was a weird situation. We were in this location and they doubled our rent, then they tripled our rent. And so we ended up having to close that store. And at the time, my business partner wanted to leave and a new business partner wanted to buy in. And that new business partner came in and said, I don't want to have any physical bookstores. So we ended up closing both of our retail stores. And that was a little hard because I have a real heart for face-to-face,
yes,
encounters with customers. We ministered to a lot of people. We'd have people come in and say, I don't have the baptism of the Holy Spirit. What is that? And so I'd say, well, here, first read this book by Derek Prince or by this person, and then come back to us and we'll pray with you.
I love that.
And so we had a lot of opportunities to pray with people and to minister to people. I mean, I'd have customers come in and say, this week I was struggling with suicide. And so that was hard for me to shut the stores down, but it was a season we felt like the Lord was leading us in. And, as I mentioned to you, my one partner left, a new partner bought in, that partner passed away. And we kept some employees on from the store longer than we should have. And so we kind of got ourselves into some debt, and closing 2 stores.
Right.
You can imagine there was debt. There was. And so I ended up ultimately owning the store lock, stock, and barrel, my wife and myself. And today it's basically very focused on ministering to people. It's e-commerce. We have a website, and we do a couple conferences a year where we'll set up tables and sell books. And I mean, I've done conferences where we had 50 tables of product.
I'm curious though, because, you were talking about how it's kind of a tough shift because you were used to having that face to face. You can hug them, you can touch them, you can hold their hands while you're praying with them. You can do all of those things when you're face to face. But how is it that you're able to continue operating in ministry now with the focus on internet only sales? What does that look like for you guys now?
Well, it looks like us. I mean, really, it's us marketing out and people calling in and engaging. Some people engage with us on social media, but we minister now to people who call in. This is an interesting story. I had a gentleman call me one day and he said, "I'm looking for these 2 books." And I said, "Well, tell me why you want those 2 particular books." And he said, "I was a missionary in South America and the enemy ate our lunch." And he said, "So I feel like these," and he said, "The enemy ate our lunch. We moved back to the United States and we planted a church. I think he's in Michigan or something like that." And he said, "And the enemy basically continued to eat our lunch, and we need some hope." And I said, "Look, I'd be happy to sell you these 2 books, but I'm going to send you a couple books for free."
Yeah.
And one of the books I sent him was by Bill Johnson, and the title of that book is "Strengthen Yourself in the Lord."
Mm.
Now, that book personally helped my wife and I through some hard seasons. Financially, we've had some hard seasons. We've lost, back when we were in our 30s, we lost some babies, to some miscarriages and stuff. And so these messages like that message have helped us, in relationship with other believers, obviously, our tribe. But material like that of sinking ourselves into the Lord to find our roots in Him and find that hope from Him has helped us. And so we want to pass that on to people, And the best way for us to do it is verbally ministering to people, but I want them also to grow in the Word. Yes. And a book is how we do that. And so I loved it when people call into us. We want to hear their story. And so I'll give a person time to tell me their story, because that's what I do if they physically walked into my bookstore. "Why are you reading books on this?" "Well, I have this issue in my family." "Well, let me suggest some other books." And so the one thing, I have people who call me and they'll say this, Shay, they'll say, "Tell me some books I should buy." Well, sometimes I say, maybe you don't need any books. I'm not in the business of just selling books to sell books.
That's good.
Period. That's not why we do what we do. It's like, I want to buy books or sell books because it's going to change that person's life.
Yes.
Period. And
yes.
So I even have a love-hate relationship with like conferences, because someone will stand up and go, "Everybody here needs to buy this book." I don't believe everyone does.
Right.
And so yes, I want to sell a bunch of books because it helps me feed my kids.
That's right. That's right.
But I don't want to just sell books to sell books, because that brings me no life, and I don't think it honors the Lord and what He wants to do in His body.
Yeah, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Do you know approximately, as we were talking about the opportunity that you have to minister to customers who call in, do you guys actually get a lot of people who actually call? I'm thinking it's an online store and that most people would just go on the website, order their books, and call it a day. So you guys actually get a lot of people who call?
And when I say it's a lot, it's not like hundreds, there might be 5, maybe more calls a day.
Yes.
Where it's an individual wanting to ask questions or engage. You saw my post on Facebook today about Lifeway closing their stores.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, there's a real desire in me to open another store, because I feel like you can do a successful store and you can serve a region.
That's right.
And I see stores all the time still going out of business. And I just feel like most of those stores that are going out of business are holding on to an old strategy. like, oh, I wish Amazon would close down. Well, that's never going to happen.
Right.
Amazon's always going to continue growing. Now, there might be some troubles for Amazon down the road, but there's ways to create community.
That's right.
And that's what it's about.
Yes.
Creating the reason that people keep coming back to us is we give service to our customers.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so good. I'll tell you another crazy story. And there was a season where I didn't have a lot of money coming in, and we didn't trumpet that, and I had a lady calling me. She was probably in her late 60s at the time. And she called me and she wanted some books that I didn't carry. It was kind of like music theory about music and freedom. This lady plays the harp at the local hospital in Ohio. And so she believes she's changing the atmosphere of that hospital. So she calls me and says, tell me some books on spiritual warfare, on shifting atmospheres. But she called me one day and she wanted books basically about the cotton fields, and she's like, and I'm like, well, I don't necessarily carry those books. She goes, right. She's like, can you get them for me? And I said, sure, I'll order them for you. So I went and I ordered them for this lady off of Amazon. Use my credit card, order them from Amazon, had them shipped directly to her. And she goes, well, just throw in $20 for yourself for doing that, And I was like, that's fine. So that's what that's why I charged her, was $20.
Yes.
And it was 10 books. And so anyway, crazy part of the story is like 6 months later, she calls me. Now, she called and ordered other books for me. 6 months later, she calls me. She said, hey, I was praying and the Lord told me that I was supposed to send you a tithe, like on a deal that I just did. And I said, well,
wow.
Okay. And
let the Lord use you.
Yeah. Well, and I had another intercessor, come through for me at that time. And she sent me like $150, which is a huge blessing. Well, she goes, well, I'm going to send you a check for $3,000. I was like, what? And so it's a weird experience, and I didn't trumpet to her like, hey, we're doing terrible financially.
That's right.
You know what I mean? She heard the Lord. And she has actually come back and blessed me a second time, crazy enough, and that's the other thing I tell you is one of the greatest blessings that I've had in my business is intercessors, bar none. I've had, the way I hear the Lord is I'll often have dreams and I will pray for interpretation, but I tell you, I've gotten some seriously wrong interpretations myself. And I have had my intercessors come around some of my dreams and come in and pray for certain things that have righted the ship when I have wronged it myself.
That's so good. Let me ask you about that. So did you was this an intentional decision to say, you know what, I need prayer support. Like I need prayer partners for what I'm doing in business. Did you intentionally make that decision and then seek that out? Or did that just kind of show up because people were showing up all of a sudden?
Well, it was a little bit of both. Because I basically what happened was, growing up under Peter's ministry in some ways, Peter Wagner has a book called Prayer Shield. And in that book, and that's a great book. I actually recommend it to anyone in business, anyone in ministry. You need to have a prayer shield. You need to have people that are regularly praying for your business, because the enemy's going to take you out, or try to. In my mind, the enemy has assignments on businesses and will do all kinds of stuff. And we saw, I don't want to sound crazy occult, but we saw some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was a youth pastor back in Minnesota, and I saw crazy witchcraft stuff in my early days. And so I know, because of the nature of my bookstore, there is, regular witchcraft that comes against us. I need intercessors. But during that time, when I bought the store, we knew we needed some prayer coverage. So we started kind of shooting up the antennas, saying who's willing to come and, pray for us. And to be honest with you, I've got a couple that are wild.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, they'll come back with some stuff and I'll be like, they'll say, Brad, I really feel like X, from the Lord. And I'd be like, okay.
You're like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, I don't even have a box for that. But they'll start praying and all of a sudden I'll see a change. And I'll be like, and I'll say to my wife, boy, that person seems a little out there, but I'm seeing a change.
Yes.
That there's a relief from what the enemy's doing. And so that's been a key part for us. It's been really important for us. And we, lean on them, to say, hey, we're making this, even like when we've gone to a conference, to do a conference in a different state or something, we'll call them and let them know we're going. Will you give us prayer coverage?
Yes.
Because it's really important to have that and to have their input from a spiritual plane, I guess, saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you actually have a full-time job that you have along with this business that, I know your wife handles a lot of the phone calls and the shipping and all of that, but you also have this full-time employment that you have as well in the publishing industry. And I'm curious to know what that's like for you, what your journey is like with, I don't even want to say balance, but how the Lord has been leading you in terms of doing both of these simultaneously. What has that journey been like for you?
Well, I think we've known for the past really 4 years that my focus has really been on working for Destiny Image and now Harrison House.
Yes.
That's really been my focus, but I feel a renewed thing from the Lord. I had a lot of jobs. Let me just say, I wore a lot of hats.
Yes.
For Destiny Image. And I oversaw international translation rights. I oversaw the sales. I worked with authors. I was wearing a lot of hats. And so by the time I came home, the thought of working on the arsenal really wasn't viable. And,
right.
And being able to give time to my kids, and my wife. And so really it's been on autopilot. My wife runs it and but marketing and in other ways, it's been on autopilot. Funny because at one point we were joking and we were like, and I don't mean this fully, but it was almost like at one point we did everything we could to kill that business. We did everything wrong in business we could possibly do. And it's still going.
Yes.
I have a brother who's a retired, he was a businessman. He's a multimillionaire. He's retired and he's 16 years older than me. And I look up to him. He's not a believer, but I look up to him in business. But he said, it's amazing that you've made it through the one of the greatest recessions in American, in the history of America, and your business is still profitable. And I'm like, it's not because we didn't, that we've done anything special. The Lord has really sustained it. And so, it's not against, and we've been seeking him, asking him what we've been doing. We haven't been getting a lot of do X, X, and X. So we're just kind of maintaining. But this last year, we started feeling like it's become a season again. And like I shared with you before, that this Harrison House thing came out of nowhere. And so Harrison House was purchased by Nori Media Group, the parent company of Destiny Image. And they came to me and said, would you be interested in running this? And I said, yes, I would love to run it. Well, running it has actually freed me up.
Oh, wow.
Time-wise. And so now my wife and I can look more at our business and say, how do we do this? And how do we step into this more? And so one of the books that I read last year was Building a Story Brand.
Donald Miller.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, I just read that a couple weeks ago.
Well, I listened to it 4 times and I've read it through once. And it helped me begin to think through how to rebrand my business, my bookstore. Yes. And so we're really doing that right now and putting those pieces together. But this year has been a shift for us to be able to put more time. But I'm still, I've got to be careful because my main focus is really Harrison House.
Right.
And I can put some ancillary time, but my wife can be doing more. And she is, and we're as we feel like the Lord's showing us what to do.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. What would you say has been some of the most significant things that you have learned about God or yourself in Him through this journey of yours in business?
My total role in everything I've done is just it blows my mind. Shay, I've got probably I graduated from high school and I have some college, but I write at a 7th grade level, and I probably read at a 7th grade level. All the way through high school, I was in special education. So I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I told you I'm a voracious reader, but it's only because I read all the time. I read when I get up in the morning. I read when I go to bed at night. And my wife usually goes to bed at 9:30. I read. But I am, I would, some people say that I have a learning disability, and I am terrible at spelling. Terrible. If I sent you an email that I didn't use Grammarly or spell check on, you would think this guy is, unlearned.
Right.
But here I am running a publishing company.
How about them apples?
And so I think the thing that blows my mind is God can use what he wants to use.
That's right.
And I didn't get saved till I was 20, and I had pretty low self-esteem. And so I had no destiny. I mean, had I not got saved at 20, I probably wouldn't be alive. I probably, with the way my life was going, I hate to even say it, but I probably would have committed suicide or done something else. But I had no hope in this world.
Yeah.
Really didn't. I was angry. I had no destiny. I would go see movies or read comic books just so I could live out of somebody else's life. But when I came to know the Lord, all of a sudden, boom, I've got a destiny. And I can share that with other people, and I can help them find their destiny.
Yes.
And so that became a real thing for me. And so my identity has been a huge thing. And as I grow in each step, I told you this, doing a podcast isn't my normal shtick. I'm usually behind the scenes. I like serving and helping authors. And, I don't need my name in their book. I don't need the accolades. They're nice, but I don't need that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I feel like the Lord's pushing me out and wanting me to do more.
Yes.
And so that, it's always stretching for me, this whole identity thing. And God's saying, Brad, even recently a friend of mine said, Brad, I got a word for you. And he goes, I went back and asked the Lord twice. He said, he said, you're a king in the marketplace. Shay, that stretches me. I don't even know what that looks like. I'm Brad, the publishing guy, or I'm Brad, the bookstore guy. I'm not Brad, the king in the marketplace.
Except that you are.
But I am. and I'm becoming that. Yeah. I'm just saying, that stretches me.
Yes.
To start to begin to think that. So, it was funny. I was thinking about the show this morning. I looked up on my mirror, and I have that written on my mirror in my, in my bedroom. And so it's like, I need to walk in that. I need to believe that. So the identity thing's been very stretching for me, and trusting the Lord in that God knows what he's doing.
Yes.
God knows that he can trust a dyslexic guy who, that has reading issues with a publishing company. Funny enough. Yeah.
I love that. That's so good. I appreciate you sharing your story. Can you give a shout? You can give a shout out for the work you're doing in the publishing industry as well as your bookstore. So how do people connect with you and with what you're up to?
So I work with Harrison House, and they were kind of transitioning websites right now. So I'm not even sure what website to give you. But norimediagroup.com is probably one of our main. It's NORI mediagroup.com. But we are the publisher of Destiny Image. We publish Bill Johnson. We publish all kinds of charismatic. We focus on charismatic, and then we also do Harrison House, which is more word of faith. Doing Andrew Womack, Kenneth Copeland, Charles Capps. Then my website is the Arsenal Bookstore, and it's arsenalbooks.com. And I'll spell that because most people can't spell Arsenal. By the way, it took me about a month to figure out how to spell it consistently. But it's ARSENALBOOKS.com. So arsenalbooks.com, and where we specialize in books on spiritual warfare, really on books on freedom, but we also sell books on the apostolic and prophetic and signs, wonders, and miracles content that's going to help you step into a deeper relationship with the Holy Spirit and see all kinds of cool stuff happen in your life.
I love it. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate you.
Shay, it's a huge honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.